Okay, I'm back. Sorry. Instagram only lets me go live for an hour and then I have to start it again. So I just got a question that said, I love when you show me what you guys eat. You need to show me what you eat more. I know you guys, I have not been as active on Instagram as I have been in the past. It's like the past 3 months or so. I just haven't been as active on Instagram because it's just been like too much for me. I'm like in this like series of growing pains. And so we're just kind of getting everything figured out on the back end so that I can get back to posting on Instagram every single day and make that a reality again. It's just been like one of those things where my practice has completely blown up since the beginning of the year, which I'm not complaining. It's a wonderful problem to have, but it's just been like, whoa, like having to, keep my clients happy and then on top of it, create content for Instagram. It's just been a lot. And so sometimes like throughout my day I'm eating and I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot to like post it to Instagram. So I'm like going to almost like write it on my hand or write it on my whiteboard and like remind myself throughout the day because I know it helps you when I share what I eat. And sometimes honestly guys, I get a little nervous to share what I eat because it's so contrary to what's like considered healthy these days, but I need to like get over that fear because I know it's helpful to you and you guys don't give a crap. You want to know like what metabolically stable foods are, but some people can just be so mean, and I've talked about this before, but like I've got serious like hate messages just regarding like people tearing my character apart because of what I eat, just being so triggered over the fact that I eat cheese. And it's just like it kind of hurts when you like open up a message and it's just like somebody ripping apart everything that you do, and like your number one goal is just to help people, and they're like just attacking you over something as silly as what you eat. I never say that you guys have to eat how I eat, but I do like love to share just because it's like it shows you that you can eat like a normal person, but I will share more about what I eat. I will make it a point. I know you guys have asked multiple times and I just feel like I haven't delivered on that, and I promise I will continue to share more and more. How do you make your own bone broth and ingredients that you use? Yeah, so it's very simple, you guys. You're gonna get a big pot of like a big, stock pot. You're gonna put your, I usually like to saute my onions first. So I'll saute my onions in some coconut oil or some grass-fed butter. And then I will put some marrow bones at the bottom. You can also use chicken feet, oxtails, any kind of gelatinous type of bone. So chicken feet, oxtails, you can use knuckle bones. I like marrow bones because my butcher has them at my local health food store. He always has marrow bones, so I just tend to use the beef marrow bones. Or if I'm making like a whole roasted chicken, I'll use the whole chicken carcass as my bones. And then sometimes I'll throw a couple chicken feet in there or something. And then I just like take 2 carrots and I just break them in half and throw them in. I take like a couple stalks of celery, throw them in. I usually take a whole bunch of kale or Swiss chard, some kind of green, throw it in, and then I fill the whole pot with water. After I've kind of sauteed the bones and the onions and then thrown everything in, I'll fill the whole pot with water, add a generous splash of apple cider vinegar, probably about like a quarter of a cup, like maybe 3 tablespoons to a quarter of a cup, just a generous splash. And then you bring it up to a boil, and once it's boiling, you bring it down to a simmer, and then you just let it simmer for 24 to 48 hours. But that might sound a little complicated, but pretty much the gist of it is you're getting as much nutrients extracted from these foods as possible. The apple cider vinegar is extracting the nutrients from the bones and the cartilage, and then all the nutrients in the vegetables are being actually left in the water, and it's becoming a broth. And then what you're gonna do once it's been 24 to 48 hours, you've simmered it for a long time, you're just gonna strain it. And so if there's any foam that's on the top, that's just toxic material. You wanna strain that off immediately, and then you wanna pour it through like a strainer with a cheesecloth to get it nice and like clean and clear. And then I just store mine in mason jars, and I don't fill them all the way to the top, and then I'll put them in the freezer. You just have to wait till it cools, and you need to leave a little space or it will expand and completely shatter the jar. So all in all, it will take you like 10 minutes to get it started, and then it'll just have to stay on the stove simmering for 24 to 48 hours, and then you just strain it and you're done. And I like to make like 2 weeks worth so that I don't have to make it every week, but you can make as much as you want. And then somebody just asked what I use to measure my pulse. I use an oximeter, Oximeter. You can find them on Amazon. There's a cheaper one, this one. I like this one. It's the Anovo. It actually has an on button, but then it also has an off button. And it's just really easy to use, easy to read. You just stick your finger in it and push the button and it reads your pulse immediately. And it's just really like easy to use. I think this one is like $25, but once you have one, you have it for life. And then basal body thermometers are, fairly inexpensive. Thank you so much, Jess. I can't wait to get fully nourished. In the meantime, can you recommend food rich in vitamin E, zinc, and food that is really anti-inflammatory? Yeah, zinc, I recommend just doing oysters once a week, so you can do them smoked. If you can get access to raw oysters, that's awesome, but some people can't, so the smoked ones can be okay. If you've never had a smoked oyster or an oyster, it is a little weird texture-wise. It's just something different that you've never tried before. It's almost like when you feed a kid something that they don't really understand. They're just like, what is this? You're gonna kind of feel that way. It's just a different texture, a different flavor, but it's not horrible to the point where you can't tolerate it. I don't love them, but I just consume them. And then I had one of my followers actually said she mashes them up with some avocado oil mayo, and we'll actually make almost like a tuna salad, but it's like an oyster salad, and put it on toast. And even her 3-year-old daughter really likes it. So I've yet to try them like that, but I thought, hey, that's a really good idea. So zinc is, oysters are great for zinc. And then vitamin E is one of those things, coconut oil has a little bit, but I actually think that vitamin E supplementation can be necessary in certain cases. You definitely don't have to do it daily. It's one of those things where you can do it 2 to 3 times a week and it's fine, or you can even do it topically. Just remember that whatever you apply topically, you need to apply 5 to 10 times as much what you would take orally. So, if you're going to take 400 IUs of vitamin E orally, you'd probably have to do, let's say, I don't want to say 40,000 IUs, but around 40,000 IUs topically, because you're going to absorb about 5 to 10%. 10% of that. So that's kind of the trick. But the less supplements to irritate the gut, the better, in my opinion. And some people need to be really in tune with their body to see how supplements actually affect them. Because sometimes, people don't feel well taking supplements internally and feel better applying them topically or getting them from their food. And then food that's really anti-inflammatory is going to be food that doesn't actually irritate your gut and contain a lot of chemicals that are going to keep you from absorbing it. So, excessive amounts of greens and above ground vegetables, cruciferous vegetables, especially if they're uncooked, are going to be very irritating to the gut, and they're also going to be very anti-metabolic. So you have to expend a lot of energy to digest them, and you don't really actually extract a lot of nutrients from them, because remember, you have a very big poop after you eat them. So all of that fiber is coming out of you. And so that's not a lot of nutrients that was actually extracted from those foods. Whereas we have, foods that are broths and collagen or gelatin, some meats, some dairy, fruits and fruit juices. Those are all really mineral and nutrient dense. And then below ground vegetables as well. So root vegetables, beets, parsnips, sweet potatoes, squashes, things like that. And then you can also sometimes do some grains if they're prepared properly, for example, traditionally prepared sourdough bread, or maybe some white rice or some sprouted oats, but that's really dependent on your gut function. It's best to stick to roots and fruits. And then, like I said, you really want to make sure that if you're doing meats and you have a really impaired digestive system, or your system's kind of impaired, you've got to do a lot of gelatinous and bone broth gelatinous foods and bone broth, lots of collagen, gelatin, and bone broth, to make sure that meat is being easily digested and you're getting a really good balance of amino acids. So that's why I say eat a gelatinous food at least once a day. It's best to consume bone broth when you consume your meat, and to just make sure you're getting a better balance of amino acids. But yeah, keep it very simple, you guys. The recipe book is being worked on right now, but it contains just I have drinks like hot chocolate in there. I have an orange creamsicle that's just some OJ and some milk and some salt and some collagen. I have some milkshakes in there. I have an ice cream recipe in there, a brownie recipe. And then I show you how to combine foods so that you're keeping your blood sugar balanced and you're keeping your body fueled. I also show you how, portion control works. So, you can't just, even though I say that calories in, calories out is not necessarily always the same for every single person or relevant. You still need to be concerned with portions. And so I show you how to eat frequently and consistently, not eat too much and not to eat too little, and really like work on actually knowing when is the next time to eat and knowing how much to eat. And then I teach you how to track, like if you're transitioning from a really low carb diet, how to kind of transition slowly so you don't get a lot of weight gain, or you don't freak your body out. It's best to change the types of foods you're eating before you actually change the amounts of food. Once you've successfully transitioned the types of foods, then you can actually start to play around with the amounts and slowly raise your calorie levels. But if you've been restricted for a while, it's going to take a really slow time. Like you got to do that very slowly so that your body can actually adapt to utilizing more fuel, or it's just going to store more fuel. So we got to make sure that when we're switching to more metabolically stable foods, we're giving the body also the time it needs to kind of adjust and adapt. Are avocados a good choice to eat daily for fat and minerals? I don't think you should eat a lot of avocados because they can be like weight promoting in some people because they're just full of monounsaturated fats. It's okay to do like a fourth of an avocado a day if you want. They are rich in potassium, but remember, I always place emphasis on saturated fats because if you really are trying to increase metabolic rate and hormonal function, you want to be placing the most emphasis on saturated fats like ghee, grass-fed butter, coconut oil, dairy products, and high quality meats. But you can absolutely get some avocado here and there. I just wouldn't like go crazy with it and be like, oh, this is like a great source of fat. It's fine. It's just like not one of those things where I would do like a ton of, like there's people that like eat an avocado a day, like a huge avocado a day, and I'm like, probably not a great idea. Don't be discouraged or hurt other people's stupidity. Think of all the amazing things you're doing for so many people like me. You are a true blessing. Thank you for saying that. Like, I really appreciate it. Sometimes it's easy to forget. Like, it's easy to forget how many people you're helping when you get, like, angry messages. It's just, like, human nature to focus on the negative over the positive. And sometimes, like, it can get you down for sure. And I think, like, I'll be honest with you guys. I appreciate your time. And I've been a little discouraged lately. Like, just a little burnout and just a little discouraged. So I just appreciate you guys sticking with me. I'm like taking some time away when I need it, and I'm like recharging my creative batteries, and it's just been a lot with me like working on Fully Nourished, and then Instagram is like growing, which is an amazing thing, but then like the more eyeballs on you, also like the more people like that just need you or have things to say about you, and so it's just a lot. And so I'm just like learning to deal with it and learning how to juggle all the balls. And I appreciate your patience, because I promise, like, my goal is to get to a point where Fully Nourished is out. I am posting on Instagram and Instagram stories absolutely daily. Like, you're seeing me daily, you're getting content daily, lots of food ideas, recipes on the blog. So the goal after Fully Nourished is actually going to get the blog fully functioning. So we're going to do recipes once a week, blog posts once a week at least. And then after that, it's going to be YouTube and podcast. So I have a lot of ideas for content. It just, it needs to be done in a way that makes it sustainable and makes it buildable. But I want you guys to know that this is only the beginning, and just as time goes on, content will get better and better, I promise. How do you test your pulses? You can either take it on your neck or your wrist, or you use an oximeter, which tests your pulse nice and quickly. And this is the Anovo one. I got it on Amazon. You can get an oximeter on Amazon very easily. Can you touch on the conflicting opinions of fructose being amazing fuel for the liver versus the idea that the liver must process fructose with an already overburdened liver you are just placing another burden on the liver? Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you have to not just increase your amount of fructose that you're eating, you also need to be very conscious of the fats you are consuming. So polyunsaturated fats and fructose together is the worst thing possible for the liver. It's not the fructose's fault, it's the polyunsaturated or the PUFA's fault, but we usually blame the fructose. So it's so important to really be focused on the fats you're consuming when it comes to consuming fructose. And then if somebody already has like fatty liver disease, for example, sometimes fructose can be too harsh for a period, and so you have to actually get the fatty liver under control before you actually like increase the amount of fructose. And so like it is important to know, like if you have fatty liver, you shouldn't like go crazy with the fructose. And I would like mostly get my fructose from like whole real fruits over like lots of fruit juices or honey or something like that until you got fatty liver under control. But there are other things that need to be done for the liver besides just increasing fructose. You have to make sure you're consuming mostly saturated fats. You need to make sure you have enough B vitamins. Caffeine can be very supportive to the liver. This is why like this anti-caffeine propaganda is just like, I'm like, get away from me, Satan. Like caffeine can be so beneficial for the liver if you have enough glucose in your liver. So that's the thing. It's like, I think that you shouldn't make a problem of fructose unless it is a problem for you, like if you had fatty liver or something like that. But you do need to be conscious about if you're going to consume a lot of fructose. You can't just be going and eating at, In-N-Out or going and getting junk food all the time, or eating these polyunsaturated industrial seed oils all the time, or eating excessive amounts of nuts, because those two together just don't tend to work really well for the liver or the metabolism. But fructose is actually pretty good for the liver in most cases, and you can find the liver actually functioning way better when you're consuming fructose in the form of fruit and some good fruit juices if they're tolerated. Best food sensitivity testing. I think that food sensitivity testing is a waste of your freaking time and a waste of your freaking money. So I've completely phased it out of my practice. I got to take it down from my website, but I haven't run a food sensitivity test in like so long, and I don't think I ever will again, because I just think they're baloney. I think they're a waste of money, and just because you have a reaction to something on a test doesn't mean your body's constantly reacting to it. It's like one of those things where your body could have reacted to it at one time, but you have no idea when that was. It could have been like 10 years ago. And what I found is so many women are getting these food sensitivity tests run, and then they're restricting all these foods. It's confusing. They feel really nervous, and they're like, oh my gosh, like they have all this anxiety around food, and they still feel like crap because they're not actually paying attention to their signs and signals that their body is telling them. They're just making their decisions completely based on an outside source, including a test. And so it's like, I don't think they're that effective. I think like hair mineral analysis is a really good idea. I think getting your thyroid tested is a really good idea. I think a Dutch test is a really good idea. And I think like a GI map or a gut test is a really good idea. But I don't think a food sensitivity test is worth your time or your money. Thank you for showing us the pulses that you use. When should I test my pulse? Like I said, you should do 3 readings of temperature and pulse together right when you wake up, before you move around, go to the bathroom, 30 to 40 minutes after breakfast, to see how your breakfast warmed your body up or cooled your body down. That will give you a signal or a sign that you either had a lot of stress hormones at play if it cooled you down, because food is anti-stress, right? So if your food cools you down, shows you, wow, I had a lot of stress hormones at play when I first woke up. If your food's warming you up, that shows that your meal is prothyroid, and we want to keep that happening throughout the day. Then you want to do another reading around 1 to 3 p.m. because you want to make sure that a morning of good habits, good movement, good food, good sunlight has increased your temperature and increased your pulse rate, but not to the point where you're in a very stressed out state. If you find you have like a very excessively high temperature or a very high pulse rate in the afternoon, that's just stress. That's not, oh, my metabolism is working wonderfully. No, it's stress. And then you always want to look at your temperatures and pulses in relationship to your symptoms. If you're like really focused on the numbers, you're gonna kind of miss the whole picture. And so it's just one of those things that you want to be paying attention to, but it's not the thing. It's just a way to kind of know if exercise and food is working for you or not. And it's a great way to see how your metabolism is increasing over time. Ostit Max is a great whole food oyster supplement. Oh, cool. I gotta write that down. Oyster Max. Great. Thank you for that recommendation. I'll check it out. Sometimes I learn some great stuff from you guys. Best supplements for acne. I think that everybody should be very careful with supplements, and food is medicine first, always. Lifestyle is medicine as first, as always. You should never just start throwing supplements at a problem. It's like, I don't know, I would consider it like throwing darts at a dartboard. You're like, maybe I'm gonna hit it, maybe I'm not. And like I kind of give you that analogy before in my last live, it's almost like baking brownies or baking a cake. It's like one of those things where there's very specific amounts of each ingredient relative to one another in a recipe. And if you double one thing, right, if you're like adding more flour, you gotta add more sugar, you gotta add more eggs, you gotta add more everything. You can't just add more flour or it's not gonna turn out quite right. And it's the same thing with your body. And so it's very important to be very strategic with supplementation, conservative with supplementation, and get most of your nutrients from food. Acne is a whole body issue. Acne is a symptom of a problem. It's not the problem. Remember, if you have infection in your skin, you don't just have skin on your face. You have skin inside of your body as well, tissues. And so, it's usually the skin's the last thing to reflect what's going on inside. And so it's going to also be the last thing to heal. And so when you have acne, it's like one of those things where you have to look at the acne. Is it really red and inflamed? Is it really cystic? Is it kind of bumpy and rough on the outside? Is it oily? Is it dry? You got to actually look at it. And is it fungal in nature? Is it, more inflammation in nature? And then it's important to kind of change the diet. Also get the liver really working very well. So you're detoxifying estrogens, making sure you're ovulating to make progesterone, which is very pro-skin and anti-inflammatory. And make sure you have enough T3 in the body so that your skin cells can heal. You also don't want high amounts of stress hormones, or your body's going to be very slow to heal. And then you're also going to have really impaired digestion when you're stressed out, like low digestive enzymes, lower hydrochloric acid, low pancreatic enzymes. And so all of that stuff is going to cause stagnation. And so acne is really usually a sign of stagnation in the body, like things aren't really moving and or getting out fast enough. But it can also be good if it's changing. If you're on your healing journey and you start to get acne or breakouts are changing, they're coming more to the surface or they're moving areas. Remember, you have different, if you've ever looked at face mapping, usually it's pretty dang accurate with what my clients are going through. And so if you're starting to see things change and move, you should realize that maybe things are actually moving inside of my body. And so see acne as a sign of a problem and not the problem, and get to the root of the problem. And it can be a multitude of issues: liver issues, gut issues, inflammation issues. And it's important to know and kind of listen to your body. Is safflower and vitamin E a no-no? I am really low in vitamin E. So I recommend doing making sure it's a non-GMO, and as long as it's a very small amount, it's usually fine. Unique E is a good brand. Now is okay, and I think Life Extension is okay. I gotta check, but I will post, like I said, on my trusty little notebook. And so I will, in my stories, I'm going to actually start taking screenshots of the products I talk about during my live so that I can show you. Keep an eye out for that this evening. Once I'm done with my lives, I will post the picture of the oximeter, vitamin E that I would recommend, and any other products you guys would like. Hi Jess, if I do well eating ghee, is that a sign I could be okay incorporating a little more dairy like cream in my coffee, assuming I don't have SIBO? Yeah, so remember that, so I would start with grass-fed butter, and remember that grass-fed butter is almost the same thing as cream. So cream and butter are almost identical in nature. They're just one just has a little bit more lactose than the other one. So I would start with some grass-fed butter. Ghee is clarified, so there is very little of the compounds that are in dairy that would be inflammatory or would irritate you in ghee. So I wouldn't use that as a gauge, but usually grass-fed dairy or grass-fed butter and cream are usually pretty safe. And then once you're good at tolerating that, the next thing I really do recommend incorporating is trying some ultra pasteurized lower fat dairy. Sometimes that's the easiest to digest, because remember, when it's ultra pasteurized, there's very little bacteria to disrupt your bacterial imbalance. And so a lot of people, when they're reincorporating dairy, they can't really do dairy very well. Or on the flip side, raw dairy can also be helpful because it has some enzymes in it that help your body break it down. And so some people find the ultra pasteurized works really well for them, and then some people find the raw really works for them. But actually trying to get your body to tolerate some true whole milk is the best way to go about it, because then you can really tolerate almost any kind of dairy. But Parmesan cheese and hard cheeses are usually pretty good. If you can do ghee, you can usually do Parmesan or raw cheddar or things like that. But it starts to get a little tricky with the milk and the cottage cheese and the Greek yogurt. But I recommend trying it. I recommend, just slowly doing it and incorporating it. I mean, it's going to take a little while. But I would start with the easy to digest, grass-fed butter and ghee. And sorry, I have my lips a little bit bleeding because I have the driest lips. The weather in California has been hot one day and then it's freezing the next day. And it really messes with my lips and my allergies. What do you mean by gelatin? So remember that collagen is really just hydrolyzed gelatin, meaning that gelatin, it thickens when it's exposed to cold, or it, like you would make Jell-O out of it, or fruit gummies or something like that. Whereas collagen is gelatin taken and processed just a little bit so that it doesn't harden when exposed to cold or hot, and you can really mix it into anything. So when I mean gelatin, I mean gelatin. And I also mean like gelatinous foods, like foods that are like very rich in gelatin, like cartilage and bones and marrow and things like that. So, you know, gelatin is in a lot, very rich, or bone broth is very rich in gelatin as well. You rock, Jess. Totally in line with all you share. I'm so happy that you guys are. I just have a more moderate approach to wellness, and this partially comes from me being so obsessed with it over, 7 or 8 years. I just got so much more restrictive. I was like a crazy person for so long. I was on stacks of supplements, and I was on paleo and then keto and just like super restrictive diets like AIP and this and that, and I just never really felt my best. And so when I actually like really start to study food and nutrition and actually see like, wow, like I can enjoy really good food that actually like nourishes my body and satisfies me and makes me really happy. It makes me really energized. And I love to share that with other women. I don't think that you need to be on a really restrictive diet to heal. Like, you don't. Sometimes you actually need to be like a little bit more loose and let go. How did you manage to heal your gut with all these restrictive diets without triggering your eating disorder? I don't have a restrictive diet. I was in a very eating disordered place for a very long time. And so that's why I don't recommend restrictive diets for women anymore. And I don't think they really are that healing, honestly. I think that really the only thing that should be avoided when you're trying to heal your gut is gluten that's not prepared properly. So like if you want to do some organic sourdough that's traditionally prepared, great, but don't eat like, glutinous rich foods. It's about seeing your body in a different way, about seeing food in a different way. When you struggle with an eating disorder, or you are trying not to trigger an eating disorder, we have to stop seeing food as the enemy. And a lot of these restrictive diets do see food as the enemy. They say, these foods are good and these foods are bad. And I'm like, no. These foods are non-foods, so don't eat them because they are not actually food. They're manufactured to be told to you that they are food. They are food-like substances. Stick to food. If you want to eat some sugar, you're gonna eat sugar. Don't eat sugar with a bunch of freaking canola oil that's processed in a factory. You know what I mean? If you're gonna eat sugar, eat it with butter, or eat it with coconut oil, or eat it with something that actually your body can recognize. So I think that these restrictive diets really do demonize foods in the long run, and it doesn't really help you in any way. It doesn't help your health, doesn't help anything. But I do think that you do have to have a more moderate approach to food if you're gonna be healthy and sustain that long term. I think that you can heal your gut by eating real whole foods. I don't think you have to be on a very restrictive diet at all. I didn't see a lot of benefit from going AIP or GAPS or anything like that. If anything, my immune issues got worse. I became more and more sensitive to foods because my thyroid was being suppressed. And remember, the thyroid is what encourages immune function. I'm so thankful for you. I'm thankful for you guys too. What is your opinion on pre-workouts? I went from working out 5 to 6 times a week to once a week after I got put on medication in November. I have no energy. Yeah, remember you guys, so, pre-workouts completely override your body. They tell your energy levels right now are your true energy levels. And if you push your body through a workout when you have zero energy, you're just making problems worse. You're not going to do anything for your body at all. It's not like, oh, I can exercise my way out of this. It's not the case. So maybe just change your whole routine. You might need to start with some more restorative exercise, Pilates, foam rolling, yoga, maybe like 1 weight training session a week or 2. Walking is super underrated, you guys. I think that walking is a woman's best friend because it's not just great for moving your body and getting your lymphatic system moving, but also for your mental game. I think it's very helpful to step away for an hour or so and just walk. Just walk, enjoy the sunshine, enjoy the air, and just walk. Nowhere to go, no place to be, just walk and set your watch for an hour. I really recommend wearing a watch and actually leaving your phone behind. Now, that's not good for safety reasons, so like I sometimes will actually like wear a pouch, but my phone is completely on silent, everything like that. I cannot touch my phone when I'm on my walk. I try to leave it at home when it's possible, and I try to just get away for an hour and just walk. And walking for an hour straight usually equals about 10,000 steps or 5 miles, and that's enough. And you can also split that up throughout the day as well. So 20-minute walks throughout the day, 10-minute walks throughout the day, but I don't think that pre-workouts are a great idea at all. I actually have a post a long time back about them, but they force your body to override its own innate mechanisms to tell you when to rest and when to actually go, and you don't want to do that because you'll end up finding that your exercise makes you colder or your pulses are bad after exercise because your exercise is actually metabolically suppressing. So if your body says rest, and never force yourself to work out. You want to move, but you don't want to force yourself to exercise. Movement and exercise are two different things. And by the way, the red light therapy has also helped my acne. Even my husband likes it for sore muscles and hair growth. Would retinol be unsafe when doing red light? That's something I would look into, but I don't think that retinol and red light will interact, but I could be wrong, so I would just make sure. But I'm so happy that you guys are liking the red light. I'm loving it too. I'll give you guys like an update soon. Actually, I'll just do it tomorrow, but there's nothing that I've really like necessarily seen, except I have multiple times used it for my head, like when I have a headache. Sometimes I get headaches like in my luteal phase when I'm being a hypocrite and not doing what I tell you guys to do. I will get a headache, an estrogen headache, and I will put that red light on, drink some chlorophyll, make sure I'm like getting enough protein that day, and it really does help. I'm also seeing like little baby hairs grow, so you know, it is definitely helping, and I've seen it actually help my skin as well. I'm actually gonna like sit under it and pop it on This Is It once I'm done, but I'm glad you guys are liking it. You are really the best. Thank you guys. I think you guys are the best. Feeding candida versus starving it and best supplements. I don't think you guys should starve your candida. It's just going to make it angry and vicious and systemic. It's, you know, like, yeah, I mean, starving it might be a symptom suppressor. A lot of people mistake feeling better for actually healing, and that's not the case, sorry. Sometimes you'll actually feel worse before you feel better. Actually, most of the time, you definitely feel worse before you feel better when you're trying to heal, because what's usually happening in like a state of infection or a state of stress is that cortisol is high. And remember, cortisol is anti-inflammatory in a way. So it's actually meant to, like, for example, if you were running from an angry bear and you stepped on a thorn, you couldn't be like, oh my gosh, ow, like, oh my gosh, let me tend and nurse my wound. Like, you'd have to keep running. And so cortisol and adrenaline, they have a job of keeping you, it's like a painkiller almost. Like, it keeps you going even when your body would normally be like, oh my gosh, ow, or oh my gosh, stop. So when you start to see stress hormones lower, you can sometimes actually see like aches and pains get worse for a little while, or you might have headaches more often, or you might kind of feel low energy and fatigued, and that actually could be a good thing over a bad thing. You should, of course, should see those things improve over time, but at the end of the day, you should see, you sometimes can see it get bad. And that kind of goes back to Candida saying that like a lot of people see that, you know, not eating sugar can kind of suppress symptoms of yeast, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the yeast is gone or the yeast is even starving. It could just be mobilizing, moving. And Candida can eat more than just sugar. Candida can also consume fat. It can consume a lot of things. So it will try to survive as much as possible. The only way to truly kick Candida and get rid of it completely is by strengthening your body's own mechanisms so that your body can finally fight an infection, has a strong metabolism, a strong immune system, and can actually do what it knows how to do, which is keep Candida in the gut suppressed in proper balance. Because everyone's always going to have some kind of yeast in the gut. That's normal. It's just when the yeast feels like it's opportunistic, it has an opportunity to overgrow, then it will. And I don't think that people should blindly go into their gut. So if you have a yeast problem, you need to be focusing on digestive enzyme production, hydrochloric acid production, which is usually a stress issue. You also need to make sure that you have adequate levels of T3 to make sure that things are moving through the gut rapidly and not going going to sit there and rot and ferment. And then you also want to make sure you're never constipated. If you're constipated, of course yeast is growing and that ileocecal valve is stuck open and things are crawling into the small intestine. So you gotta kind of focus on overall body balance rather than just killing candida, because it's just gonna be a battle that you're gonna lose constantly. But supplements that can be very antifungal and helpful are undesalic acid. I like one called oregano, which is just oregano oil. Caprylic acid can be helpful, or MCT oil. Coconut oil, eating a raw carrot every day, eating well-cooked mushrooms a couple times a week, and diatomaceous earth can be helpful in breaking down biofilms, and so can proteolytic enzymes or pancreatic enzymes. So, you have to also kill candida's home, not just candida. So there's quite a lot of herbs that are antifungal, and it just kind of depends. Like, some people do really well on grapefruit seed extract, and some people don't see anything. Some people do really well on berberine, and some people don't see anything. Some people do really well on pau d'arco, but some people don't see anything. So it kind of just depends, but usually undesalic acid and oregano works pretty good. My dad had gastritis, and he's always feeling burning and super uncomfortable. I feel so bad for him. Any recommendations? Yeah, I mean, if he hasn't already gotten checked for H. pylori, that's really important. If you've had H. pylori for a long time, what can happen is at first you have really low stomach acid production, but then a very mature infection will actually eventually cause high stomach acid production. Then we can also have that stress on the body, and high stomach acid or H. pylori can actually loosen up that valve that's in between the esophagus and the stomach. And then what can happen is that, all the digestive juices can start to get into the esophagus and burn it. And then mastic gum usually really helps, especially if it's an H. pylori infection. I like the one by Nutricology. It does need to be in a capsule and not like a solid pill, because it needs to be actually absorbed. But a lot of people with gastritis see that mastic gum helps them, especially if it's due to H. pylori. When are you going to start doing seminars? 5 tickets for me, please. Okay. I was wondering if you guys would be interested in a meetup or something like that, because it's something that I would be interested in doing for sure. I just want to make sure there's enough interest in it. I was actually thinking about doing maybe a small retreat, and I would do it just for the sake of having an intimate group of women meet and, spend a weekend by the beach or something, make it as affordable as possible. I wouldn't be making any money at all. I would just be coordinating it so we can all stay at the same place, and we can all fly into the same area, and we can go out to dinner together and just hang out. Maybe I can plan some things. So if that's something you guys would be interested in, please DM me on Instagram and just say hey, I would be interested in something like that, and tell me kind of a budget. Of course we have to be realistic, a plane ticket, and then a stay is gonna be, it's not going to be cheap, but I would never be okay, I'm going to charge you $5,000. I'm going to charge you to be in my presence. Okay, come on. I just want to hang out with you guys. So, and then we can talk about health. It would be I would make sure we have scheduled times where we go through, we have a couple workshops. I teach you how to do some things. It would be worth your time for sure. But I think that would be really, really fun. But I think that would maybe be more fun than a seminar. But if you guys don't want a true seminar, we could totally do that too. I just sound like the type of person that wants to just sit down in a circle with you guys and chill. But I'd be happy to get up on stage and be do this if you want. But I am planning on maybe doing some kind of, I will eventually have online training or some kind of thing that for people that actually want to go a little deeper into their own health and know about lab tests and what they need to look for, and or for practitioners that are interested in learning. I'm kind of thinking about coming up with a more in-depth program or protocol for people that are either self-healers or people that are actually wanting to learn my methods. And so that's kind of something that I'm thinking about as well. So I always want to just make sure that there's an interest in that, but I'm happy to do any of that kind of stuff. Is it possible to get rid of plantar warts? They have been passed down from my grandma to my mother and to myself. Had it as long as I can remember. Yeah, so, I think that it's one of those things where you have to kind of get to the root of the issue. It is usually warts are caused by viruses. And so it's one of those things where, the immune system suppresses viruses. And so, you got to make sure what's going on with the immune system, what's maybe suppressing this. And it's really interesting that it was passed down between your grandmother, your mother, and you. That's very interesting. You know what gets passed down between grandmother, mother to mother? vaginal, the vaginal juices, your whole immune system, your gut bacteria, your microbiome. And so if that's the case, then it probably has something to do with the microbiome. There's some kind of virus there. Sometimes regular antivirals can help with warts. I guess not, like, I've never had experience with specifically plantar warts. If I have, like, no client told me they had plantar warts, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't work like a regular wart. Some people have found that soaking them in apple cider vinegar or applying like an aspirin paste directly on them can be helpful, or tea tree oil. But then in addition, taking in like internal antivirals like L-lysine, monolaurin can be helpful. The same brand by, I like Inspired Health's biofibrin or proteolytic enzymes can be really helpful at breaking down scar tissue and like building up new tissues. So it could be quite a few things. I've heard people doing like apple cider vinegar soaks on their feet, or they'll like soak a cotton ball and like tape it over the wart. But I know they can be hard to kill, so I don't think it's going to be something where it's like, boom, they're gone, like you're healed. I think it's more going to be something there where if you actually dug into that issue, or you had more health issues than that, you might find that they're interrelated, or there's something like some kind of immunosuppression going on. Any more biofilm disruption recommendations? I really like diatomaceous earth, and then I really like biofibrin, or biofibrin is by a brand called Inspired Health, but it's just a lot of proteolytic enzymes. So you could get like any kind of proteolytic enzyme, like serrapeptase or something like that. But I like proteolytic enzyme blends. They're usually the best for breaking down biofilms. But what else? I mean, activated charcoal, there are some like plants and stuff that can be helpful, but I think like the actual mechanical mechanism that diatomaceous earth performs, which is actually like tiny little diatoms or tiny little razor blades, is the most effective. But remember, taking it, you want to be really conservative, and it can cause die-off. And so, sometimes taking diatomaceous earth alone can cause too much die-off. It's killing too much, and you're like, ugh, because I always say, like, when pathogens die, they let off like a last hurrah. They let off their noxious gases and toxins that need to be actually processed by the liver. And so taking activated charcoal alongside of diatomaceous earth is usually a good idea, because you have activated charcoal absorbing any of the crap that's being secreted by these bacteria or these pathogens or candida. But I find that diatomaceous earth is the most effective, and then proteolytic enzymes. There are a lot, like if you typed in, Self-Hacked is a really good website. They write like very in-depth articles about different compounds, biofilms, things like that. And I think they have like a really good long list. But at the end of the day, I think like you don't need a ton, you just need a couple. Yes. Is it possible to balance your hormones while still taking birth control? No, because, well, okay, here's the deal. Your cycle is shut down. So you're not ovulating, you're not making your own progesterone, and you're not making your own estrogen. Your body's relying on synthetic hormones. So you can get to a point where you're at your healthiest you can be on birth control, meaning that you're eating well, you're taking care of your body. But at the end of the day, your female cycle is shut down completely. You're not ovulating, you're not making progesterone, you're not getting those benefits. Your thyroid is being suppressed because of that, and your body is probably being exposed to more stress. In addition, the birth control pill also does disrupt the gut and burden the liver. So those are things you have to take into consideration. I don't think birth control is bad or good. I think it's really the woman's decision. I do think that it affects the woman's body very, very harshly. So a woman needs to be aware of the side effects. You need to be fully informed when you go take that birth control pill. And there's not a lot of people speaking out about what's going on. I have a very unbiased opinion. I say you need to do what works for you. But at the end of the day, if you have specific goals or you want specific results, I will be straight up with you and say, it might not be possible on the pill. It just might not, especially if you're sensitive. There are a lot of contraindications to the pill that doctors don't know. Like, for example, if you have hair loss that runs in the family, it's not recommended that a woman take the pill because it can trigger uncontrollable hair loss, like early hair loss in a woman. Or diabetics. It's really not supposed to be prescribed. That's actually like a FDA recommended contraindication, like blood sugar issues. So there are like things that women should, I always say, like, when a doctor prescribes you something, go do your own research for like a week on it before you even think about filling the prescription, unless it's like a life-threatening thing, because you need to be aware of your options and also the risks that are involved. I think it's really not only your responsibility, but your right to know how something's going to affect your body. And also, like, have a doctor that if you're going to ask questions about the prescription that they're prescribing, will sit down with you and actually answer those questions and not just shut you down. Because if that's the case, then they're not really your partner or your team in your health. They're just kind of they're telling you what to do. Where it's like, wait, I pay you. I pay insurance, which pays you. Like, I pay you, you work for me. So you just kind of have to remember that. I mean, it's so important to trust your doctor, and it's so important to have a doctor you can trust. And it's important to listen to your doctor, especially when it comes to life-threatening. I've seen kind of this trend in the health and wellness space where people think that all Western medicine is bad, and so they're like not taking antibiotics when they are necessary, or they're not taking certain things when like it's necessary. And like, I've actually seen people get very sick, or there's actually been stories of people dying because they decided to go the natural route. And so I think it's important to be responsible. But that was a long way of me saying that you cannot balance your hormones on birth control, because you do have technically synthetically balanced hormones on birth control. You're taking a measured dose of synthetic hormones every single day that's shutting your own cycle down and suppressing your own ability to make hormones. How do you know if you're healing or not? Do you have to have a healing reaction? No, you should see, that's why I really do like doing temps and pulls, because you start to see things happen, but you should start to feel better. Even I always say, you sometimes can have a healing reaction at first, especially if something you're doing is kind of harsh on the body. The first couple weeks can be a little bit lower energy, you can feel a little under the weather, you might have cold or flu-like symptoms, that kind of thing, but you don't have to have those things. The way that you know you're healing is you're starting to see slow improvements in your main symptoms. So let's say your main symptom is a really bad afternoon slump and you wake up feeling very unrested. You should start to see days where, okay, I actually woke up kind of more rested today. And then the next day, I kind of felt more rested today. That's not to say you're not going to have another bad day and be like, I'm right back where I started. But you should start to see things slowly move in the right direction, especially when it comes to your symptoms. But I always say, you shouldn't really go by weight. You should always go by how you're retaining water, moods, digestion, energy, your personality. Are you feeling like your full self? Or are you kind of feeling like a withdrawn, kind of meh version of yourself? How's your digestion? How's your sleep? How's your moods? How's your mental clarity? How are you thinking? Are you forgetting things often? Are you unable to focus, or are you on it? And are you looking people in the eye and engaging the conversation? Obviously, there's a lot of personality, differentiations there, but at the end of the day, you should feel like you're getting back to your tip-top shape, or you're more feeling like yourself. And then weight will follow that. Weight is the least important thing to move. We want it to move, but we got to focus on those other things. Can H. pylori cause big problems in the body, like inflammation or other things? Yeah, I mean, it can cause issues in digestion all the way down because it can suppress stomach acid. But you have to ask yourself, why did H. pylori get there in the first place? It's a bacteria that lives in the stomach, and it doesn't really like high stomach acid levels. So usually people get H. pylori infections because they have low stomach acid in the first place. And so your goal is not necessarily just to kill H. pylori. I mean, sometimes you want to because you'll feel better. But again, remember, put the focus on where it's at, which is why did that happen to me in the first place? Because that's going to be the only way that you prevent it from happening in the future. Natural allergy relief solutions. Are you talking about really bad nasal sinuses or postnasal drip? Sometimes that could just be a gut issue, honestly, like candida or fungal issues. Quercetin, I'm trying to think of what it's called. Quercetin can be helpful in some cases. Grass-fed beef pancreas can sometimes be helpful, especially for histamine issues. And then, there's nothing wrong with if you have to do Benadryl or one of the more old school allergy medications like cyproheptadine, but the newer ones like Zyrtec and stuff, they are a little harsher on the liver. So I would be careful with those, but Benadryl and cyproheptadine can be okay on some days, especially when it's getting really bad. But you want to know why your immunity is suppressed, and so make sure your thyroid is good. Make sure you don't have high stress hormones, which can totally suppress the immune system as well. Histamine intolerance symptoms, causes, and cures. Histamine intolerance is so funny to me because, and I don't mean it's funny that you're struggling with it. I mean, it's so funny that it's now this big thing. People are talking about how, I'm not eating histamine-rich foods, and I'm like, you cannot clear histamines because your immune system is so suppressed and your liver is so suppressed and your gut's so suppressed, you can't even break down histamines fast enough because everything is slow. Sorry, my Wi-Fi cut down. So, when histamine is an issue, histamine is not the issue. It's a bigger issue. Histamine should be detoxified in a healthy body. And so we have to make sure that that's why I always say, guys, temps and pulse, we got to start seeing where our stress hormones are at. We got to start seeing where our thyroid function is at, because, when you start to put the pieces together to your health and you're starting to realize, wow, I've been on a really low carb diet for a really long time and I've just gotten, worse and worse immunity issues, worse and worse inflammation, or I've been on a very low calorie diet and now I'm like, I'm allergic to everything in the sun. You're very immunosuppressed or metabolically suppressed. So you have to kind of get a gauge as to where your stress hormones and your thyroid is. 9 times out of 10, someone with histamine issues is struggling with bigger issues than just histamine issues. And so your inability to clear histamine is a symptom of a bigger problem. And so we've got to speed the metabolism up. You got to make sure things are going through the gut quickly. Sometimes activated charcoal or something that's going to bind to toxins in the gut can be really helpful. Sometimes also it's just like small intestine is very slow and things are kind of like rotting and inflaming and fermenting there. And so like raw carrot can really help with that. Eating raw carrot every single day. Eating well-cooked mushrooms every day can also do that. Like you really want to well cook them in saturated fats like coconut oil or grass-fed butter. And then also you need to make sure that your digestive enzymes and your hydrochloric acid is high. A lot of times it's not. And so, that is usually a symptom of a bigger problem. A lot of people, when they start eating healthy, they don't realize how important the fats are. And like I always say, polyunsaturated fats really suppress the stomach acid production and hydrochloric acid, which is going to completely wreck your whole digestive system. And so you got to be really focused on what fats you're consuming. Saturated all the way, guys. Coconut oil, grass-fed butter, grass-fed beef tallow, ghee, and meat from, or fat from your bone broth, and then from your meats and your dairy. And so, avoiding histamine foods doesn't fix a histamine issue, because the histamine foods were not the problem. It's just the fact that you're not clearing histamine and you have to ask yourself the magic question I always say is why? Why are they not being cleared? I have H. pylori because of years on antacids. Oh, I had low stomach acid and I know that now, but doctors have never heard of low stomach acid. It is so silly. Thank you for educating us. Yeah, it's weird because there are doctors that know about it. It's called hypochlorhydria. So like meaning like low stomach acid. But stomach acid is so important, and if you've been on antacids for a long time, your digestive system is just wrecked. I'm sorry. It's like it seems so counterintuitive because Western medicine treats heartburn and stomach issues with antacids, and remember your stomach's supposed to be acidic, so it's like it's the exact opposite of what needs to occur, and so it ends up causing more problems in the future. So coming off of antacids and recovering from antacids, like it does take a little while. You have to be patient and you have to be consistent, because it can be a healing process for sure. Going off of the question about natural allergy relief, I have asthma and allergies and I'm allergic to animal dander. I live with 3 dogs, so I take antihistamine every single day. Zizal, is this going to hinder my liver healing indefinitely? It can. If you find that you have hormonal issues or liver issues, you're having bad PMS or something like that, sometimes switching the allergy medication you're on can be helpful. I always say ask for cyproheptadine if you can. It breaks down histamines in the gut, and it can be really helpful for gut issues, but it can also be a great choice for allergies. But, it's one of those things where if the doctor prescribes you something, trust them, take it. And if you need something, great. Focus on everything else you can control, and maybe your allergies will get better. Sometimes people have allergies because of liver issues in the first place. Isn't that funny? And so, as their liver heals, they see their allergies get less and less and less. So it's one of those things where it's going to take time, and I wouldn't really focus on the medication you're on until you've done everything else, and then you're like, wow, I'm still not getting the results I want. Then I would look to something that you're taking every day. But until then, I wouldn't make it an issue unless it does feel like it's in your gut that it is an issue. If we do the red light therapy on our face, do we need to wear goggles? You don't have to wear goggles, but I would wear some kind of light just protecting your eyes. I don't think it's necessary. Like, I don't think it's gonna hurt your eyes, but if you feel like it's hurting your eyes, like, obviously just trust your body. It's like one of those things where if you're like, it's irritating me, you know, like, just put some goggles on, like put your amber tinted goggles, or some sunglasses. Like, you'll find me just like sitting in front of my red light with like my Ray-Bans on, just like, you know, like a lizard. So, I think it's like good to protect your eyes if it's bothering you, but I don't think it's necessarily like necessary. But just like be responsible. If you're sitting in front of it for like an hour, then I'd probably protect my eyes. I've read that quercetin can help as an allergy pill. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jess. Yeah, it can, but it's also estrogenic. So that's why like I'm careful about saying like, oh, quercetin is anti-allergy, because like, yeah, there's like all these supplements that have great compounds, but at the same time, like, you're not looking at how they're affecting you on a whole level. So yes, quercetin can be helpful, but then at the same time, it can be estrogenic and it can cause like certain things to get worse. So I'm just like careful about saying like just flippantly like quercetin's a great natural option, you know? Sorry if you already touched on the topic, just getting here. Oh, hey, Erica. I'm making sure that I didn't miss your question because I think I did. Can you ask it again, Erica? Because you're at the very bottom, so I'm like, I don't want to like go scroll through and give you guys like a look of my tongue out of my mouth kind of face where I'm like trying to focus. But yeah, if you had a question, just let me know. But, yeah, I mean, quercetin's a great allergy pill, but it can be estrogenic. Yeah, Lynn, it can be estrogenic, not anti-estrogenic. So that's why I am careful. And remember, you guys, when I say estrogenic, I don't mean like natural estrogen that your ovaries are creating. I mean like estrogens in the way that it's going to increase too much serotonin in the gut. It can cause IBS symptoms. It can cause like, you know, estrogen dominance like symptoms. We don't want to be consuming things that are increasing estrogens unnaturally ever. That's why I always say like don't drink out of plastic, don't eat out of plastic as much as possible. You know, try to limit the amount of toxic hygiene products you put on your body, because we're trying to limit the amount of exposure we have to all these synthetic estrogens, because they're what cause us to be really inflamed and insulin resistant and gain weight. You know, remember, estrogen used to be called adipin, you guys, and what does adipose mean? It means literally fat. And it's been known for quite some time that cows were fed both estrogen and industrial seed oils because those were known to be anti-thyroid and to fatten them up. I don't want to be the new age fattened cattle. I don't know about you. Sorry, last question. You don't have to say sorry. I'm here until Instagram cuts me off. It's hard. I lose track of time when I'm on lives. I'm like, feels like 10 minutes goes by and it's been an hour, but I'll be here for an hour. Sorry, last question. Why does the sun make my face and body covered in freckles and moles? Are all the PUFAs to blame for this? Thanks so much for all the answers. Yeah, so if you are interacting poorly with the sun, meaning you get a lot of moles, you get a lot of freckles. I used to get that too, and I was like, what's gotta give? I mean, like, it was like my early 20s, and my mom's really freckly too, so I think it like is genetic a little bit, but I was like, this is not normal, and I would see a freckle pop up like all the time. And so, yes, it can be. And so can like melasma. Any kind of hyperpigmentation or liver spots can also be caused by either estrogen or PUFAs interacting with the sun. Because remember that PUFAs are what actually, your cells actually build themselves out of whatever fats you're consuming. So they have like a protective layer around them. And if you're gonna consume PUFAs, those are gonna be the things that interact with sunlight. And remember, PUFAs are not very heat stable or light stable. They oxidize and rancidize quickly when exposed to light. And so we don't want to be having our cells made out of PUFAs. We don't want to be storing a lot of PUFAs in our fat cells. We want saturated fats because they're heat stable. They can interact with the sun a-okay. And so like internal sunscreen almost is consuming lots of saturated fats. You can really tolerate the sun better. It's not a coincidence, you guys, that like skin cancer rates have raised so crazy since the 50s, around the same time when they started pumping industrial seed oils into the food and people stopped eating so much butter and tallow and traditional foods. So just trying to like make that connection. How's your red light contraption working? Any progress with hair growth? Sorry if we touched on your red light update if you did one. Also, what almond crackers do you like or make? I do like Simple Mills almond flour crackers very rarely. Like, you guys know I'm not a huge fan of nuts, but it's kind of nice to have like some kind of cracker that you can trust. And at the end of the day, it's like I don't want to demonize something. So like some kind of rice cracker or some kind of like, I like Simple Mills almond flour crackers from time to time is a good option. And then my red light contraption's going good. I mean, I'm seeing some new hair growth. I really like how it's like affecting my skin, and overall, like I turn it on in the morning every day now. It's kind of like my habit. I have it like clamped on my headboard, and I just kind of bask for 20 minutes, and it's a great way to start the day. It makes me feel really like energized and ready for the day, but also like not in a like stimulated way. But I think it's going to take a while for it to actually kick in hair growth wise, but I'm excited to see. Okay, Instagram's cutting me off in like a minute, so I'm going to try to get through as many possible. My son is 17 and he's never hungry. He doesn't have an eating disorder, but only eats once a day, a big meal. I'm worried for him. Any suggestions? It's like one of those things where, you know, maybe just start taking his temperature if you want, but I wouldn't worry too much. Men are a little bit more resilient to stress, and some men like don't, but if you don't have an appetite, that's a problem, because if you're not utilizing fuel, then, or you're not burning it, then you're not going to want it. And then also make sure he's not constipated. Like sometimes like people's digestion is really like irked, and so they're not hungry, or they have low stomach acid. I've had persistent acne for the past year, and I never had it before. I can't afford to see a naturopath, but I feel like I've tried everything. I do have a feeling it might be gut related. What do I do? In that case, because you've been struggling for so long, it's time to be done with the experiments and to just test what's going on in your gut. I would start with that, honestly. I've been tracking nasal temps so hard as sometimes I'm waking up early, 6 a.m., and sometimes I sleep until 8 a.m. No matter what I've been taking temp before I get up, noticing I'm going up and down between 96 to 97.